If you're planning to take the CLEP test to pass out of or get credit for college composition, you'll have some multiple choice questions, but you'll also have 2 essays to write within a time limit. And that's what I want to help you with in this video. My name's Erin Lebacqz. I now own the teaching company High Value Writing, but in the past I taught college composition for years, and I know you can pass this test by planning ahead how you're going to outline it, what you're going to say, what exactly is being asked for, and how you're being graded. So this video is going to walk you through how to do both essays. They're slightly different. Essay 2 is a little bit longer than Essay 1, but in both cases we'll look at what's being asked of you by the prompt, how can you prepare for this, how can you make an easy, quick outline, and then what about using those sources, right, and even citing them. At the end we'll have some examples of how to cite sources, what does synthesis really look like, and some of the details of that exam. Okay, so let's get right into it, talking about Essay 1 here. This is the shorter essay. You get 30 minutes for this. It sounds short, but if you plan ahead and already have your general outline in mind, you can easily get the test done in that amount of time. So here are the instructions, and after I read through, I'm going to say, well, what is this really asking for? So we have write an essay in which you discuss the extent to which you agree or disagree with the statement provided. They're going to give you a statement to think about, right? Support your discussion with specific reasons and examples from your readings in your life, your experiences, your observations. So this essay is actually coming from your opinions, what you've seen and learned in the past is what you're bringing up. We're not working with a specific text for this one like we will with Essay 2. So what is this prompt really asking for? Well, the main thing here is highlighted. You are going to say whether you agree or disagree with the statement, and then you'll be going on to say why, right? So out of that whole prompt, that's really kind of the part to hone in on. And then I want to clarify one other thing. It does say share the extent to which you feel this way. So how much do you agree or disagree? This is important because it shows it's okay to not be 100% agree or disagree. It's okay to say, I kind of disagree with this, but this makes a little sense too, or be a little bit in the middle. So we're going to look at examples for fully agreeing or disagreeing, or for kind of doing a mix. At the bottom of the slide here, you see kind of a tiny outline of what we're looking at here. You have to say whether you agree or disagree, and that will be your thesis statement. More on that in a second here. What reasons do you have for believing that? And then what examples can kind of show those reasons to be true? So let's look at how to do each of those 3 steps there with the green dot, starting with agree or disagree, which I am calling your thesis statement, right? You're saying what you think, and that's going to dominate what the essay is about. All right, so before I get into these examples of thesis statements, you'll see a couple times in this video, there's a little video icon. Just means, hey, we have a background video on this, how to write a thesis statement. So if you want more of a deep dive on that, you could pause this video and check that out and come back. And I'll do that, a few more times during this video. Pretty much 3 ways to set up your thesis. And you can go into the test knowing that you're going to do one of these 3 things. That's a huge time saver. But 3 thesis statements that would work here. I agree or disagree with the statement because, or you can be more specific, like what was the statement? I agree, disagree, that art should be taught in schools. You'll be saying agree or disagree, right? Or maybe partially of both. Or here's a mixed one. Although I agree with this side of the statement, I don't agree with this side of it. So you can do something like that as well. So go into the test knowing that you're either going to say I agree, disagree with the statement, or with the actual topic that the statement brought up, or a mix. Okay, so that's our agree or disagree thesis statement. Let's get into how to do the reasons and examples, and then I'll put up an example of an outline, actually 2 different ones that you could go in already thinking about. How to identify the reasons. So you've said you agree or disagree, now it's time to say why, and then you're going to kind of have to prove that that why is reasonable with your examples. So the reasons, I would suggest you either have 1 main reason per paragraph, or if you're planning to use 1 reason a large reason to support your whole argument, then you can divide up the paragraphs by an example per, all supporting that reason. So sometimes you might say, I have 3 reasons that I agree. Sometimes you might say, I agree because blah, 1 reason, and then spend time going deeper on that reason. Either approach is okay. How will you get your reasons and your examples though? Again, these are coming from you. These are not coming from a reading that they give you on the test. That will happen in Essay 2. For Essay 1, you're basing your thoughts on your own life. What have you experienced? What have you read? What have you seen? Has given you these ideas for these reasons, right? And these examples. It is okay to have reasons on both sides. If you're doing a mixed statement, while I agree with this part, I don't agree with this part, you can have reasons for this part, and then on the other hand, reasons for this part. And we'll see how to outline this in just a moment. But what about those examples, right? The examples will support the reasons, which will support whether you agree or disagree, your thesis, right? So the key with the examples is, do they really show the reason? Do they really show why that thesis might be true? So examples have to fit in and really illustrate, right? Think of showing an example, an illustration of this reason that you've given. Make sure each reason you use has at least 1 example. You don't want to give an opinion or give a reason and then walk away from it. Then you could get penalized for not supporting your argument or your reasons. So only share reasons that you have examples for. If you have reasons for both sides, like we talked about, have examples from both sides. And then again, those examples are coming from you. They could be memories of things you've encountered in life. They could be things you've seen in media or read. And they could be just things you've noticed, right? Observations, it's called in the directions. What have you noticed over the course of your life that you can provide as an example? So 2 possible ways that it would be easy to outline this, and you could just go into the test with these in mind, If you set up your essay in a way that's very easy to read, very orderly and organized, it's just natural that the person grading it will have an easier time grading it. They will consider it more clear, right? So it's really in your best interest to go in with a plan for how to be orderly about it. Here's what I would do. I would say my thesis statement right at the beginning, and then I would get into my reasons. And the reasons here, the sections 2, 3, and 4, those are probably each a paragraph, or maybe 2 paragraphs if you have more than 1 example for a reason. Either way, don't forget that when you open up a paragraph, you want to open it with a topic sentence. And here's a refresher on how to do that. You don't want to just open a paragraph starting talking. You want to take a moment to say, oh, here's the main point of this paragraph. That is making it easier for your grader to follow your argument, making it clear that your argument is logical, right? So don't forget to start paragraphs off strongly like that. But I would do a paragraph for each reason, and then I'd do a paragraph wrap-up. Sometimes in the wrap-up, you might reference other views. You might say, while we've seen examples in life that are different, I still believe blah, blah, blah. You might not, but in some examples I've seen that have gotten good grades, I've seen them do that, sort of give a reference to an opposite perspective, but still come back to why your perspective makes the most sense in this argument. You probably need to restate what that argument is, restate your thesis, and then you can end on a final strong example or a restating of a strong reason to just kind of leave them with, all right, that's what I learned from that paper. So this is one way that you might outline it. This is kind of like if you have multiple reasons. But if you want to focus on one solid, deep reason, you can bring that up and then spend your different paragraphs, in this case 3, 4, and 5, on one example each. Again, beginning with a topic sentence, right? So I would suggest using one of those 2 outlines. Be ready with it in your mind when you go in and you know how to write the thesis statement. Now you're just in there thinking of reasons once you find out your topic. On that note, here are some example prompts, and I'll say these are not exact from the test. If you've looked online to prepare and study for this, you might have noticed there aren't that many examples up there, right? So I'm getting these from 1 or 2 examples that I've found, but also from looking at people's online conversations about the type of topics they had on their test. So I used my own words a little bit, but these are the kinds of prompts you're going to get. A statement that already gives an opinion, and then you're saying whether you agree or disagree with that opinion. There are no challenges so difficult, no challenges so impossible as the ones we set for ourselves, is the first example. So you might get a statement like that, kind of a statement about what is life like? And then you're saying, do I think that's true for most people or not? And here's why. You might, again, get sort of an opinionated statement about things going on in society, in this case, art and music. Art and music are not timeless, this statement argues, but actually most important during their own time. Again, you're thinking, is that true? Or do music and art kind of go beyond their own time in your experience? Another one that's about how life works. The help of others is needed to achieve great things. Do you think so? Why or why not? And then lastly, it is more important to be feared than loved. Again, we'd have to really think there about our opinion and get ready to write that essay with the outline, of course, our thesis being whether we agree or disagree with one of those statements that we get. I want to share how you're graded, and then we'll wrap up essay 1 with some more details and examples and tips. How you're graded. So I studied the rubric, the grading sheet that the graders will use to study your essays. And this is basically what's on there. I said I used my own words in a few cases just to make it really straightforward. The first one sounds way too obvious, but I'll say what I mean here. Do all the requirements. What that means is if you forget to focus on the statement, or forget to use reasons, or forget to use examples for the reasons you've given, then you're actually not doing the requirements, right? We saw the prompt earlier where you have to say those things. So make sure you're not leaving any of that out. If you use the outline, you won't leave anything out because it's all in there. Only share reasons that you support with examples. If you share reasons and then just walk away from them, that can hurt your grade. So always think, I need to prove what I'm saying every time, right? Don't assume someone would agree. You always have to prove it here. Stay organized. Make it easy on your reader. If you use the outline, it's going to feel very orderly, feel very logical and clear to that grader, and that's what you want, right? Make sure your sentences don't all sound the same. This is a tough one, but there is some information in the grading that they would like to see what's called sentence variety. Some are short, some are long, some start one way, some start another. Try to not have them all say A, B, A, B, A, B. And here's a video on that, using 3 different kinds of sentences to make sure you have that variety. Use specific words. You don't have to try to use a really showy vocabulary, but if we use general words like good, bad, thing, topic, this, that, we'll be being too general. So try to use specific words instead of words that just sound really general. And then lastly, they are graded a little bit with grammar and punctuation. It's okay to have an error or 2, but you really want to focus on smooth reading. Make this really smooth for whoever's going to read it. And so quite a few different examples of what that could include, right? But I wanted to include this reference to a video on fragments and run-ons. We don't want to have those in the essay, or you're going to be getting dinged on your grammar, all right? So that captures everything you want to do for essay 1. You can let me know in the comments if you have questions. I'm happy to answer them anytime. And let's go ahead and move on to essay 2, the longer essay where you will use 2 texts that you compare and synthesize. And I'm even going to tell you what synthesize means and provide some examples of that. So let's get into essay 2. All right, with essay 2 of the CLEP College Composition Exam, you get 40 minutes. Essay 1 was 30 minutes. This one's 10 minutes longer. I think you could think of that as the same amount of writing time, but 10 minutes extra in the beginning because you also have to do some reading. In this test, in this essay, You're going to read 2 different passages that somebody else wrote. You're also going to read about a topic and get an assignment. And it's going to be your job to answer that assignment, address that topic with your thoughts, but also bringing in information from those 2 readings. So with this one, we're going to actually walk through how do the instructions work, because there's kind of a lot of instructions. I want to explain what all of those mean. And then we're also going to look at how to do all the steps, of course, including how to cite your sources in this case and how to synthesize, right? What does that really mean? So let's read the prompt here. You will get information beforehand. I'm going to show that in a moment, but then you'll have this assignment part saying exactly what to do. And I've highlighted the parts that are really you are doing it, right? The following assignment requires you to write a coherent essay in which you synthesize the 2 sources provided, right? Read the 2 things, say something about them put together. Synthesis refers to combining the sources and your position to form a cohesive, means it sticks together, supported argument. Your view, source 1, source 2, all 3 things coming together as you talk about them. You must, here it comes, develop a position, say what you think, and incorporate both sources. One more thing you need to do, you must cite the sources, meaning refer, who said this, where did this come from, right? I didn't make this up, let me tell you where it came from. You must cite the sources whether you are paraphrasing, putting it in your own words, or quoting using their exact words. So either way, you're citing your source, and I'll show you how. Refer to each source by the author's last name, the title of what they wrote, or by any other means that identifies it. I think what we can do is focus on the author's name or the title of what you've read easily. So let me break down the full, almost an entire page of instructions you're going to get that includes this. And what we just saw is the green part. You have 4 things to do to get ready to write. I would recommend use the first 10 minutes for this. And then much like Essay 1, you walk into that 30 minutes remaining with already an outline, already a plan. You can do it within 30 minutes when you're ready like that. So here's what you'll get in your instructions. Number 1, they'll give you an introduction. They'll say, here's the topic we're looking at. Let me tell you all about that topic. So you want to read that. What's the topic I'll be talking about? The sources will also be about that topic. Then they'll give you that assignment. Read these 2 things, say your opinion on this topic, and refer to both of the sources as you do it, right? So you're getting ready by reading number 1 and 2, and then number 3 and 4 on here is to read the 2 passages. As you read them, I would suggest thinking of just a couple things here. Do you agree with what's being said? Do you find examples that you think are strong? Do you find quotes that you want to use in your synthesis? You do need to reference both of these readings, but you may not agree with both, and you can still use them when you don't. You can use quotes where you compare them and things like that, right? So here's an example of that assignment part saying what to do, but with a real topic. And I found this online in one example that I was able to find of the test. Read the following sources, those 2, right, thoroughly, carefully, then write an essay in which you develop a position on whether copyright restrictions benefit or harm society. At that moment, you could go back to what we talked about in Essay 1 with how to write your thesis, where you're agreeing copyright restrictions benefit or no, they harm society depending on your opinion. Of course, you're also going to be sure to incorporate and cite both of the accompanying sources as you develop your position. So you're thinking about copyright, whether that's helpful or not. Then you're reading what the other authors said and putting all that together in your answer. Here's how I would suggest outlining that. And again, you could kind of memorize the outline going in and then plug in the topic that you get, right, after reading about it. Thesis statement, here's what I think about that topic, copyright law in this case. Reason I think that, right? Reason A. In this case, I think I'm going to try to support this with items from both sources. We know we have to synthesize, which means bring things together and show how they relate to one another. So in my first reason, I think I'll pull a little bit from source 1 and 2. Here's an example or a quote from those. I'm also, you see on the B's here, going to always cite them, and we'll look at how to do that in a moment. Maybe I go on to reason B then, and I only use source 2, reason C, and now I'm using source 1. It's okay if some reasons use both sources and some use only one. The key is to use both sources more than once in your entire essay. Then you've got your wrap-up. Restate your thesis, refer to both sources, and try answering the question, so what, right? If you've ended it and you're kind of like, what's next, right? Maybe answer the question, so what? How will this affect the future? What might be the next steps in this scenario? What should we think about now? What should we do now? That's kind of a good way to leave with a message of importance at the end of your conclusion. So how are we going to cite these sources? We'll look at citation, we'll look at how you're graded for this one, and then we'll look at synthesis, and then I'll share my final tips for both essays put together. So when you cite, you have to do it no matter whether you are saying things in your own words or using the author's words. Either way, you have to cite it. How you do that is either focus on using the author's last name or using the title of what you've read. And then at the bottom here, you see a few examples of how to do that. Maybe my author is Quince. Quince goes on to state, and then I put my quote marks and my quote. Or maybe I use the title of the reading. The third paragraph of blah, blah article shows, or maybe you put the quote, blah, 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 as Davidson explains. I'm using the author's name there. Or another one with a title, at the end of this article, we learn and we share a quote right there and explain the quote. So those are a few ways you can cite your source. Again, if the author's last name or title is there, every time you use something from a source, you're good. You've cited your sources. And that's part of your grading for this one, right? Doing all the requirements now includes citing your sources, and it includes synthesizing. Next slide, I'm going to show a little bit more about what that means. The rest of these instructions are the same as the previous essay. They're graded very similarly, except that this one includes citing and synthesizing other texts, other sources. So on that note, here's what's really meant there, or here are examples of synthesizing. You're saying something that includes all three things: your view, source one's view, source two's view. Sometimes you might be saying something that's only putting two of those things together at once, sometimes all three. So here are a few examples of that. While author A and author B disagree on the topic, I actually agree a little with both of them. Since author A provided better evidence than author B, I was more convinced by their argument. Here I am using the reading title instead of the author name. Readings A and B actually have something in common. They both blah, blah, blah. Or, while both passages offer evidence against the statement, author B does so most convincingly. So we're comparing, we're contrasting. All of that is part of synthesis. What we're not doing is just talking about one thing all by itself. We're always connecting and comparing things, our view or one of the sources or both of them. Okay, so with all of that, I want to leave you with 3 final tips, and this goes for both of your essays, really. First thing I'll say is, if you find yourself showing your opinion, that's a good thing. Don't be worried. You are wanting to be persuasive here. You want to show an opinion or argument. So that's perfectly fine, and it's what's asked for, actually. Second tip, assume nothing, prove everything. Don't assume that because you said your view and a reason that the reader will get how those go together. You have to explain, why is that a good reason? Why is this a good example of that reason, right? And then thirdly, try reading it aloud in your head before clicking submit, looking for logic. Does A lead to B lead to C? Does each of your point lead to the next? Does each new point follow from the previous? If you're not sure how to keep things logical and orderly, here's one more video reference on writing with flow. So each sentence will connect to the previous one, and you'll have written something very orderly for your grader, which again helps with getting a good grade on this test. All right, thank you so much for watching. I wish you the best of luck on your exam. I would love to know how it goes. If you use this video, if you don't, I'd love to hear in the comments, what was the test like for you? What did you learn? What tips can you share? And of course, feel free to let me know anytime what questions you have. I'll be sure to answer you in the comments and do my best to help you pass the College Composition CLEP exam.